Catholic part's true, he told himself. Perhaps the rest is too, about the riches. Yes, but the sooner I'm armed and back aboard Erasmus and behind her cannon, the better. He consumed the food, dressed, and stood shakily, feeling out of his elements as he always did ashore. His boots were missing. He went to the door, reeling slightly, and put out a hand to steady himself. But the light square lathes could not bear his weight, and they shattered, the paper ripping apart. He righted himself. The shocked woman in the corridor was staring up at him. "I'm sorry," he said, strangely ill at ease with his clumsiness. The purity of the room was somehow defiled. "Where are my boots?" The woman stared at him blankly. So, patiently, he asked her again with sign language, and she hurried down a passage, knelt and opened another lathe door, and beckoned him. Voices were nearby, and the sound of running water. He went through the doorway and found himself in another room, also almost bare. This opened onto a veranda with steps leading to a small garden, surrounded by a high wall. Beside this main entrance were 2 old women, 3 children dressed in scarlet robes, and an old man, obviously a gardener, with a rake in his hand. At once they all bowed gravely and kept their heads low. To his astonishment, Blackthorn saw that the old man was naked, but for a brief, narrow loincloth, hardly covering his organs. "Morning," he said to them, not knowing what to say. They stayed motionless, still bowing. Nonplussed, he stared at them. Then awkwardly he bowed back to them. They all straightened and smiled at him. The old man bowed once more and went back to work in the garden. The children stared at him, then laughing, dashed away. The old women disappeared in the depths of the house, but he could feel their eyes on him. He saw his boots at the bottom of the steps. Before he could pick them up, the middle-aged woman was there on her knees, to his embarrassment, and she helped him to put them on. "Thank you," he said. He thought for a moment, and then pointed at himself. "Blackthorn," he said deliberately. "Blackthorn." Then he pointed at her. "What's your name?" She stared at him uncomprehendingly. "Blackthorn," he repeated carefully, pointing at himself and again pointing at her. "What's your name?" She frowned, then with a flood of understanding pointed at herself and said, "Onna, Onna." "Onna," he repeated, very proud of himself, as she was with herself. "Onna." She nodded happily. "Onna." The garden was unlike anything he had ever seen. A little waterfall and stream and small bridge, and manicured pebbled paths and rocks and flowers and shrubs. "It's so clean," he thought. "So neat." "Incredible," he said. "Nakeliba?" she repeated helpfully. "Nothing," he said. Then, not knowing what else to do, he waved her away. Obediently she bowed politely and left. Blackthorn sat in the warm sun, leaning against a post. Feeling very frail, he watched the old man weeding an already weedless garden. "I wonder where the others are. Is the Captain General still alive? How many days have I been asleep? I can remember waking and eating and sleeping again. The eating unsatisfactory like the dreams."